君、眠りが浅いみたいね。また会いましょう。
What's happening, everyone? I'm Sir James from Gamerfuzion.com, and today I'm here to bring you my review for a must-have PlayStation Vita exclusive known as Freedom Wars. Now, going over the story without giving away any spoilers whatsoever is that you are a sinner. At the start of the game, you have lost your memory, and therefore you have to serve many years of time. Now, as a sinner, you're pretty much a mercenary of the lower form of society, where you do missions for the higher-ups, even putting your life at risk if may be. As for the higher-ups, these are the people who basically obey the law and give you missions to do, but at the same time, there's another portion of the story that kind of unfolds as it goes on, but I don't want to go any further than that because that will lead to spoilers. Now let's go ahead and jump onto graphics. Now, as we get to the graphics, visually the game looks really good on the PlayStation Vita and or the Vita TV if you're using that option. Now, don't let the video fool you in my review because I'm not able to capture the gameplay properly, but like I said, in person it looks really good whether it's a smaller screen or bigger screen. The character models have a really nice HD texture to it. Now, what I did notice is that during interactions, the character models are still in HD while some of the background environments are kind of a lower resolution, which I understand because most games tend to do that. But once you get into the combat phase of the game, whether depending on the location, like if you're indoors kind of in a darker environment or in a lighter environment such as in the open desert, the environments themselves look really good. The structures are really nice details all around, but overall visually the game looks really good on the Vita and Vita TV. Now, as we get into the gameplay, this is where things get really interesting, but before I jump into the combat portion of the game, I do want to go ahead and take a step back and talk about the section before the combat, and that is basically all the little things that you're going to have to keep note of because it kind of throws it at you at the beginning of the game, and it's a bit overwhelming at first, but once you progress a little bit further and take time to learn new sections, then it does become a lot clearer. But starting off, you have this whole right system. Every time you complete a mission, you get points to spend, and which you could use to get rights to do certain things. For example, one of the things that threw people off in the very beginning is they were trying to run to a certain location and they got punished, adding another 10 to 20 years by the law because they ran for more than 5 seconds. And you basically have to go in, and I kid you not, this is really legit. You actually have to go in and buy the right to run for more than 5 seconds, to interact with the opposite gender, all these little wacky things. Heck, you can't even lie down in bed, otherwise you'll get punished, and you have to earn the right to do that. So all these little things you have to do, especially when it comes to upgrading weapons and or other skills. For example, you have a vine that you have a combat vine you start off with, you can buy a healing vine, and of course you can buy a shield vine and upgrade that as it goes on. Other things is that you can buy weapon pillages. For example, you have the right to use heavy weapons, other things to use like level 2 weapons, level 3, and so on. Now, of course, in addition to that, and besides the character interaction, is that you also have a factory. Now, the factory is where you're able to build one of 3 things. In this case, you can actually build all 3. You have a weapons factory, you have a medical factory, and you have a support factory, where in this case, it's pretty much the same thing as your Vine. If you go to the weapons factory, you can actually upgrade your weapons from level 1 to level 2, but also at the same time, you also have to level up your weapons factory to upgrade certain weapons. For example, if you have a level 2 weapon but your factory is level 1, you cannot upgrade that level 2 weapon until your factory is also level 2. And when you are crafting a weapon or combining certain items, you do have to wait because there is a timer. First it starts off with like 5 to 10 minutes, and then it increases from there. The higher the level, the higher the weapon. Now, as we get to the combat portion of the game, this is where things get interesting. Now, for here, there is an option. If you have online access, you can connect with 3 other people online for a 4-player cooperative experience, which is a lot of fun, by the way. Or if you don't have online access, the AI does a really good job by themselves. So if you're kind of worried about having a lackluster AI team, not to worry, the AI does do a good job, and you can select what kind of people you want in your team. However, if you are playing in the offline mode, you do have to keep note that if you want your AI to have access to higher up weapons, you do have to give them the right to do that. In this case, by spending 300 points per character, which does get expensive and prevents you from getting certain rights if you want something else. But if you're using certain people that you want all the time, then it shouldn't be really too complicated. And like I said, for the online support as well. Everyone has their characters, everyone has the rights to do whatever access they have the right to pretty much do whatever it is that they want in the game and whatever weapon access that they have. Now, of course, before you can go into combat, you can change your loadouts. You could change what you want for your primary or secondary weapon. You could change what kind of vine tactic you want. Do you want a combat vine? Do you want a medical vine for healing? Or do you want a shield vine to protect you during combat, especially during some of the creatures? Now, when you get into the combat mechanic itself, depending on the objective at hand, you may have an objective where you have to go and rescue civilians, in this case by picking them up and take them to the evacuation point. Others may be where you have to eliminate all the enemies within the area, or you may have a couple different options where you have to rescue civilians, but at the same time taking some of these much larger creatures within the game, and they do pack a lot of punch. Like I said, if you're playing offline, the AI does a really good job. It does take a little bit of while, but if you're playing online, everyone knows what to do and has heavy weapons, then it should be pretty much relatively easy. But offline mode, if you want a much more of a challenge. Online mode, if you just want to kind of go by it quick, depending on what you want to go with. But overall, the gameplay was really good. The only thing I did notice a slight lag when you're in the Warren section, which is a kind of like an intersection where you have 3 different caverns that you're able to go into, interact with people, or purchase items and or upgrades. But let's go ahead and move on into the sound portion.
ほう、そうこなくてはな。
だから早く見つけてあげてね。
これなら変革の試練に打ち勝つことができるだろう。今日は満足した。また刃を交えよう。
As for the sound portion of Freedom Wars, the most frequent questions that I get is, does the game feature any English voice actors, or is it only in Japanese? The game is only in Japanese with English text. Now, as for the Japanese voice actors themselves, they sound really great. What I like is that they give each character in the game kind of like their own unique personality. You have like this one guy that's kind of like the big boss, and he's kind of like a father to everyone else. You have another character that's a bit wacky, is trying to figure out what the heck this is happening to him. And you also have some of the female roles, and they do really good portraying as their characters as well, but everyone did a really good job. Now, another thing that surprised me about the game is the soundtrack. The soundtrack of the game is just really good, really enjoyable to listen to, especially when you jump into the combat portion of the game. You start kind of like bobbing your head, kind of going the rhythm while you're just getting into the groove. But overall, the voice actors did a really good job, and the soundtrack was just great. Definitely well worth picking up the soundtrack if there's an option to pick it up separately. Now let's go ahead and jump into the lifespan. As for the lifespan, what kind of lifespan do I see for Freedom Wars? What's going to make players want to come back to play this game even more, or is it just a one-time playthrough? Well, first off, this is a AAA title that the Vita has been needing for a long time, but that's not the main reason. The main reason is because the game is a lot of fun, the missions are really good, sometimes it can get a little bit repetitive, but the main focus here that players are going to want to come back to play it even more is the fact that you can connect online to play with others or your friends. That's going to be the main primary thing. I mean, it's a lot of fun connecting with people or your friends and just battling these giant creatures, communicating, just overall, just, you know, once you have hands-on experience and once you actually try it out for the first time, it's going to get you hooked on, and it's something that players are going to keep repeating over and over again. And the fact that you can go and upgrade your factories, upgrade your weapons, unlock new weapons, skills, and of course even save up some of your points so you get some of the higher up rights to purchase in game. But overall, the game has a really good replay value for sure, and the story was really well done. Now, as we get into the innovative, was there anything new here? Was this something that we already seen before? I would say it's kind of a combination of both. It does borrow elements from other games and putting it into its own twist. At the same time, it does also introduce some new factors, like this whole vine combat mechanic that could also change up the battlefield quite often, where you can choose between the combat, medical, or shield role depending on what your personal role is in the game. At the same time, this whole right system where you have to purchase rights to do certain things, like run more than 5 seconds to use a level 2 grade weapon, to have your AI companion use a higher grade weapon. All these different things kind of combine into what you're able to do in the game, and once you have access to all that, then you can do more and more within the game itself. And I thought the factory, including the option to build factories to help upgrade your weapons, and the fact that you do have to wait for certain, for the timer to end in order for you to take the weapon, I thought that was done well as well. It was something that you don't see often in games in today's society, but at the same time, it was just really enjoyable to see. But overall, in the end, Freedom Wars is definitely a must-have title. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. A great game. I kind of wish there was a lot more different modes for the online option besides the whole co-op and facing off against other players. Just been, you never know. There might be some DLC content that will introduce new modes. We'll just have to wait and see. But a 9 out of 10 is what I'm giving it. I highly recommend the title. It's only $30, $10 cheaper. But if you guys want to see some gameplay, you guys check the link down below. Anyways, I'm Sir James from Gamerfuzion, and always remember, guys, Gamerfuzion empowers your gaming.